Welcome to Out of the Box with Christine, the podcast for conscious entrepreneurs. Are you willing to step into your greatness? Are you ready to shine? Well, get ready, Truth Seeker. You're in for an amazing ride. And now, here's the host of the show, Christine Blosdale.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Out of the Box with Christine. I am your host, Christine Blosdale. And I am so glad you tuned in today because we have an informative, educational, inspirational show for anyone who has been the victim of those energy vampires known as narcissists. My guest today is Heather Kent. And Heather is a registered psychotherapist and Canadian certified counselor from Nova Scotia. Nova Scotia. I'm talking Canadian now. In Canada, with a background in trauma assessment and treatment. And she is the author of the best-selling book, I Left My Toxic Relationship, Now What? And also the book called Heal from Your Narcissist Ex. Oh, we've got so much to talk about, Heather. Welcome to Out of the Box with Christine.
Thank you so much for having me. I am so happy to be here. And yes, I am a Nova Scotian and currently living far from the ocean now. I live in Ontario now, but yes.
Canadians are some of my favorite people. You're so cool. You're like a blend of all these. The only thing is in Canada, I have not yet said I can't wait for some Canadian food.
Oh, well, you're missing out on the poutine and the maple syrup. Yeah. That's where it's at.
There's Mexican food, there's Italian food, there's Japanese food. And I told my friend who's Canadian, I go, I've never said, I am just hankering for some Canadian food.
Canadian food. I know, it's true. Because, in every region of Canada kind of has different flavors. So like an East Coast girl, bring on the fish, right? So bring me the seafood. So that's my jam.
Well, again, thank you for coming on and sharing your expertise. But let's just jump right into this, shall we?
Absolutely.
Because for those that are tuning in that don't know what a narcissist is, would you like to take the field here and talk about what is a narcissist?
So it is, I think it's a really important question because it's a really popular kind of bit of a buzzword, I think, too, right now. And so, it's a real difference between people who might have like some narcissistic traits versus full-blown narcissistic personality disorder, right? And so to kind of go with the full personality disorder, the diagnostic criteria from the American Psychological Association has like a very specific set of criteria. There's 9 different sort of key traits, only five of which you have to possess, any combination of any 5. And so it kind of ranges from like grandiosity, like really over the top, overt, look at me, I'm amazing, I'm fantastic, I'm the best, I've fixed everything, and I'm just wonderful, and the sun shines out my rear end, and I do nothing wrong, and look at me, look at how fantastic I am. And so there's that aspect. There is the key hallmark, real kind of trait of any kind of narcissistic personality is the lack of empathy. And so they have this part that's just not there, where they don't have the capacity or ability to even consider how other people may be feeling, how what they do may impact other people. And even if that is pointed out to them, it still doesn't factor into the decision-making process. They're going to do what they're going to do for them because the ends always justify the means to get their needs met, regardless. And so the lack of empathy is really the hallmark piece. And then you have like some jealousy. We have inner insecurity that's being hidden by these, grandiose gestures and this overtness. And that's kind of the more common, I think, sort of thought that people have when they think of a narcissist. And that's not untrue. However, I have a bit of a pickle with the APA's version of what a narcissist is, because it's really only categorizing one sort of subtype of narcissistic personalities that exist, which is that kind of, we call it an overt narcissist. So that really, extroverted, over the top, want to be in the spotlight, give me attention, me, I'm fantastic. You might think of some politicians in current recent events that may come to mind. And so these are the, the things that are portrayed often in media and, in movies and that kind of thing. However, we have like 3 other major sort of categories of narcissistic personalities that I think are less known to people. And I think these are the ones that are really important for us to know about.
Right.
So if you don't mind, maybe I'll
please do. Please.
Okay. So the kind of more confusing one is sort of the opposite of that grandiose, overt narcissistic type. We call these covert or sort of fragile narcissists. And these people don't like to be in the center of attention. And the reason for that, so they're more introverted, they don't like to have attention drawn to them. They still possess that inner grandiosity where they think and believe that they're better than other people, that they don't do anything wrong. They still will not accept responsibility for their actions or their behavior. There's no accountability, lots of blaming, deflecting, right? But the big difference is that they don't want people to pay attention to them because they are so terrified of judgment from others that they actually don't want to draw attention to themselves. And so very opposite to a grandiose narcissistic personality who reports high levels of happiness. They think everything's great. They think their relationships are amazing because they're just so delusional. Like they have no clue that, their partners or spouses secretly hate them. So they think everything's fantastic because they're just very delusional. And so they report high levels of happiness and they think that everything's okay. Whereas a covert narcissist, for example, will report high levels of anxiety. They report, not having stable relationships. They're very insecure. They have high levels of depression. And so they don't have stable relationships because they harbor this sort of inner resentment and the jealousy and comparing. So there's a lot of sort of keeping up with the Joneses going on in a covert, fragile, narcissistic kind of mindset. And so it's very important to maintain the outer appearance of everything, of them being, perfect, because the judgment and fear of judgment or perceived light from others would just crumble their egos, right? And so that inner fragility, that insecurity that they all have, every narcissist is very insecure underneath it all, but they harbor that and they hide that from the outside. And so the covert narcissist will report having being diagnosed even with depression, anxiety, possibly ADHD, substance abuse issues, addiction issues, that kind of thing. And it's all kind of tangled up in a narcissistic personality disorder that is undiagnosed quite often. And then in my case, I was married to a communal narcissist.
Oh joy. Yeah. What is a communal narcissist?
So they're actually even trickier to figure out and to kind of spot because they outwardly present themselves as being amazing humans.
Oh, one of those.
Yes. Good people. They're volunteering, they're donating money, they're on the board of directors for charities,
right.
Nonprofit organizations, service organizations. They're, erecting swing sets and public gardens and coaching the hockey teams and all this sort of stuff, which is all wonderful, of course. But then the kicker is, what's the motivator behind those lovely things that they're doing? And the motivator for a communal narcissist is, of course, the recognition, right? So they do those things not because they want to be a good person or because they want to give back. They feel, moral or ethical responsibility to humanity or anything like that. It's more they need to be viewed as the best good person out there, right? And so everything they do is for that recognition of, he's such a great guy, she's such an amazing woman, oh my gosh, you're so lucky to be with this person. Like, I can't even believe how amazing they are. You know, they're a great neighbor, a great friend, they're super reliable, they're fantastic. Well, you know, they're very social. So like they have good social skills so that they're not awkward. So they, you know, they're fun to be around. They're easy to get along with. And then you go home with them. Yeah. And then the
then you
mask comes
marry
off.
then you marry them, and
Oh, yeah. So I can't tell you, if I had, you know, a dollar for every time I was told, Heather, you are so lucky, you know, to be with him, I would be a millionaire.
And because they can be so charming too.
Very
They're
charismatic.
really good actors. They're
very
really,
good.
right?
Excellent. Like, they should be in drama programs.
They should. They could be like winning Oscars for their performance.
Absolutely. On a daily basis, they put on Oscar-worthy performances, and they did so, you know, in my case too, and like in front of my family and whatever. Like, they're very good at what they do. And so for the, you know, the whole outside world thought that my life was perfect with, you know, charmed, and I had this great relationship, great guy, whatever. Little did they know what was really going on behind closed doors. And then finally, the most sort of dangerous, I would say, like life-threatening type of narcissist was what we would call, and it borderlines on the psychopathic, sociopathic,
Yes.
part of the dark triad, we call it. And this is a malignant narcissist.
A malignant narcissist. I've never heard that term.
Yeah. And so, I mean, it sounds as bad as it, like it is.
Sounds like cancer. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
It pretty much, like, it slowly kills you. But really the hallmark of them is that not only do they have the lack of empathy, you know, as all narcissistic personalities do, but in this case, they actually get pleasure from inflicting pain. And purposefully, like, making it their mission to destroy other people. And like, that is what brings them joy, basically, right? So it's that real sociopathic kind of psychopathy that, and it borders on that. And that's where you'd see, you know, more kind of like dictator Adolf Hitler kind of scenario, right? Where, you know, the joy comes from power, control, and, you inflicting pain on others. Yeah.
And especially the emotional pain, because
100%,
because that's absolutely not, because if you know, if your spouse, you know, beat the crap out of you, you know, you'd have bruises, you could say to your neighbor, look what he's done to me. But when it's a psychological, right, and trust me, I know, when it's that psychological effing that they do with your mind, you don't know, after a while too, you don't know what, because they're so convincing and so good, and their whole life is wrapped around being able to manipulate you.
Exactly.
And after a while, I know I can understand some people going, the sky is actually really green because he says it's green, and
it must be.
Yeah. And it must be.
I must have had it wrong this whole time. Yeah.
Silly me. Yeah.
Oh, for real. And the thing that I think is also a big misconception that society has is that it's not abuse unless there's physical wound.
Oh my gosh. No.
Right. And this is like, I want to just blow this out of the water right now, because absolutely not. And, you know, in my opinion, the physical manifestation of abuse is just the final step of it, right?
Correct.
Like, it went so far in the psychological damage, emotional damage, and there's nothing left but to start beating the person, right? And so by the time it gets to physical violence, make no mistake, the psychological abuse has always been there. So this is something that I think is really, so in the province of Ontario, for example, in a court of law, in terms of, like, you know, legalities and support for, you know, abuse victims, finally, as of this year, 2021, in January, the Court of Ontario decided that psychological abuse is part of domestic violence. And so
in 2021.
yeah.
Wow.
And it's just Ontario. Like, not all the other provinces have decided that. It has to be physical violence. And it had to be physical violence here to be considered, domestic abuse,
Wow.
In terms of separation and divorce and that kind of thing, and protection of the abused party, until this year. So it's a real big problem.
Well, and here's the thing is with a narcissist, and I know there's different level again there, and we even have maybe some narcissistic traits, just average people walking around, but we're talking about the vampire narcissist in many respects. The issue is that they have all the time in the world to mess with you.
And it's amazing how they find this time, because they all have jobs and, successful careers, a lot of them, like they
well, they're overachievers in many ways, right? And that's for the facade. I'm a upstanding businessman in the, community, blah, 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 blah.
I'm a doctor, I'm a psychiatrist, I'm a lawyer.
Very much the outside appearances is very important.
Absolutely it is.
Right? But what happens is that and here's the thing, if it's a partner, spouse, girlfriend, boyfriend, whatever, what they do is they find out your secrets, your weak points, if you ever once cheated on or fudged a little thing on a tax form, or you did something, and they draw that out of you.
Yeah, or even some terrible belief that you have about yourself, like a low self-esteem issue.
Low self-esteem, or if you were traumatized at a young age and you said, because they come on you and they say, you know what, you're my soulmate, you're the best person in the whole wide world.
I protect you, I love you,
and tell me your secrets. And then so you tell this person who it might be your husband or soon to be husband or wife, and you're like, well, I gotta tell him all my things. So you expose yourself as vulnerable and say, well, this happened to me, and really they just file that in their little cabinet. And when the opportunity
pull it out when they need it,
right?
Yeah.
And that is the mental manipulation and abuse that they rely on, and they have no problem telling others about it, telling others that, oh, this person, my wife is crazy,
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
So
did you get the crazy?
My ex-husband phoned my family and told them, while I was at work, told them that I had a psychotic break and that I was off sleeping with multiple people, and that that he had proof, and that I needed to be committed and needed psychiatric help.
Oh, he tried to commit you.
Oh no, he told my family that
he told your family to commit you.
Yeah. And, they were visiting my poor sister. She was like 9 months pregnant at the time, so she couldn't get on a plane, and my parents were with her. So they were all like hysterical. And like, of course, again, because he was a communal narcissist, he's a great guy. What reason would he have to make something this, intent? Like, how would you make this up? Right. So I must have lost my mind. And then I don't know, I called them to say, how's it going? How are you doing? Like,
yeah, hi mom.
How you doing? They wouldn't talk to me. They wouldn't get on the phone with me. And then my dad got on the phone. He started yelling at me about how I had to be a better wife. And then he hung up the phone.
Oh no, he did.
Oh yeah. And I had no idea what was happening, because I didn't know that he had called them and told them all this stuff. So for like weeks, my family refuses to speak to me, and I have no idea. I've done something terrible, and I'm trying to atone for this, and going to counseling. And I asked him to go to couples therapy, and then he tried to shame me to the therapist. And it was actually the couples therapist, that told me, you got to get out. This is not healthy. You have to leave.
Wow. Thank goodness.
Yeah. That was the slap in the face that I needed. It's like, the marriage therapist typically doesn't say, Yeah, let's let's call it, you know. But you know, that's what she was seeing. So
well, and you touched on something that's absolutely really important, and if you could feel free to expound on this, since you are a psychotherapist as well. We tend to want to, as human beings, and if we love someone, if they're narcissistic or not, we want to fix them. We want to, we want to say, well, they just need therapy, or I can make this person nicer, better. In my experience, and I've spoken also with Dr. Judith Orloff, the queen of empathy. There is no fixing these people. There is no
no.
Yeah, can you expand on that? Because I want to. We're speaking to directly to those people who think you can fix especially a master narcissist, a sociopathic narcissist. Okay, they lack empathy, which means they don't care how you feel, or how the children feel, or how the dog feels. So can you please expand on this? Because I think it's really important. We want to fix people, but
100%.
Yeah.
100%. So this dog is just a little bit rangy right now. So if you see
it's
me
okay
rambling, that's what's happening.
It's okay.
So yeah, this is a real big problem. And, you know, I've been involved with court cases that are like next level. I don't know how this person hasn't been committed, like for real. When you read like the court documents, and you read the, you know, the claims that the narcissistic partner has made, and, you know, the 128-page parenting capacity assessments, and like all of these things, they don't have access to their children because of how abusive they are, but they are, you know, claiming parental alienation from the other parent, and like trying to convince the courts that the psychologists are inept and, you know, should be disqualified from practice, and like going after all of the, like, it's just like you said, they have all the time in the world to fight and to try and destroy you. And this is, you know, people do ask me often, can a narcissist, you know, like heal or like recover or like get better? And, you know, the answer is yes, but, and it's a huge but, huge caveat. And there was actually an article in Psychology Today about this back in January, which I thought was really interesting. And yes, they can. It is possible. And like, you know, I do actually have a couple of narcissistic clients, and it's interesting because they can see it, but it is very slow work because you are constantly battling the ego, constant. And it's like, you know, you make progress, and you know, they're in self and they can see it, and they're like, okay, I'm going to make these changes. I'm going to practice this week. And they come back the next week, and it's like they've regressed as if you've never had the conversation. So it's very, very slow, very frustrating work. But here's the thing. Let's talk about a public figure who might fit into this category that we may be aware of. And let's picture whether, number one, that person is going to admit that they have a problem. Let's picture if, number two, that person is going to agree to go to a psychiatrist for a diagnosis of NPD. And then let's picture whether that person is going to agree to go to therapy like weekly for the next however many years to get better. Let's talk about that.
No, they're not.
So, you know, it's really interesting. I was like looking up stats about how many narcissists are in the world. You know, there's something like, I don't know, 120 million narcissists in the world diagnosed. But how many people do you think actually get diagnosed who really are suffering from this personality disorder, but who, you know, they're never the problem? There's nothing wrong with them. It's all you. It's everybody else. The world is out to get them. The world is to blame. They are perfect. You know, it's all just everyone else's fault, everyone else's problem. And so they're never going to go and get the help that they need. Or they'll say, yes, sure, I'll go to therapy. And they'll sit down with the therapist and they will talk about how they are the victim and the good person who has had to, put up with so much difficulty in the relationship.
Yeah, they're exactly.
They had to sacrifice so much. And then this therapist who doesn't know and can't see it is validating them and giving them 1 hour of undivided
attention. Validating a narcissist is dangerous.
Well, that's what they need to survive. So we call this narcissistic supply.
Supply, exactly. Let's talk about that, doctor, because so, that's the thing. And because some people too understand, they don't understand why. They're like, but why would someone spend so much time trying to hurt me, manipulating my mind, triangulation, all these things, ghosting, right? Ghosting is the worst, right? I love you, and nothing, and ignoring you,
and fell off a cliff. Yeah.
So your mind is, you're like, what I do? So the why, awful. Most people want to say why.
Yep.
And this is important because it's the food. It's the food of the narcissist. It's like the blood supply.
Totally. Right? And so when people ask me why, like, because when I do, recovery work, like with people who, are survivors and trying to like rebuild after that, constantly, and even if they're co-parenting and they're still involved, and they use the children as the manipulation tools, right? And they're constantly still like barraging you with whatever. And, they're at like, why? I don't understand. Like, how could they do this? How? Why? And my answer to them is twofold. Number one, you're trying to approach this from a place of logic. And we can't do that because we are not dealing with a logical being. We are dealing with a personality disorder that only understands one thing, which is their own self-interest. And so we can't approach it from a place of logic and what we would never do because we have empathy and they don't. And so the answer to why is because they have a personality disorder. Does that excuse their behavior? Hell no, 100% not. You got to take responsibility for yourself and pull up your big grown-up pants and like deal with your stuff, right? At some point. But the issue is for a narcissist, they are in desperate need of, like you said, the blood supply, right? And I liken it, my analogy to it is kind of like a gas tank that has a leak, that has a hole in the tank, and you fill the tank, with premium fuel, and you go back to the same gas pump because it's a great pump and it's always there and it's reliable and it gives great gas and it's, high quality and it's consistent, but there's a hole in the freaking tank and the tank is never full. And you can't just keep going back to that tank because that tank eventually the pump runs out of gas. So you got to go to other pumps. And you constantly are filling this tank with multiple pumps of different sources of gas to try and keep it full. And this is what it is like for a narcissist's survival. And I do mean it. Survival is key and they need supply to survive. How do they get it? One person will never be enough. You could be the Queen of England with all the castles and jewels and everything else. You could be perfect. You could be, the servant, the trophy partner, whatever it is, the master chef, it doesn't matter. It won't ever be enough because one person is never enough for us to give them the supply that they require to survive and feed their narcissism.
Yikes. And the thing is like you said, there are millions of these. They're like zombies to me.
Undocumented, roaming the streets,
making, and here's the thing, making people's lives miserable.
Yeah.
And affecting whole families, whole communities.
Like I deal with it. I guess it's not really indirectly anymore. It was indirectly, but I deal with it now through the children of my partner because the other half's family is a narcissistic family. And so, yeah, it's
not just one in the family. It's a pod.
And it often is intergenerational.
That is
yeah.
key. And also, you know, I'm always interested in not just like even with films, you know, movies, not just watching a film about a villain, right? But knowing how the villain became the villain. So
Absolutely.
How did Darth Vader become Darth Vader? How did Maleficent become Maleficent? How did you know what I'm saying? Like
totally.
how did the 101 Dalmatians, that evil lady, how
Cruella
did
de Vil, yeah.
Right?
And when you find out about, you know, when they do these sort of character studies, is the word I was looking for, character studies on these villains, there's often a very tragic trauma history, right?
A tragic thing that happens to them at a very young age.
Correct. And that is absolutely.
And that's where I think that's where also the split happens, because I've spoken about the subject matter, and I've spoken with a particular person who is a self-identified master narcissist.
You've interviewed a very prominent one. Yes.
We'll include that link in the show notes, because it was quite eye-opening. But even though his ego and everything, he was, you know, it was very much about this, I'm doing something noble by telling you. It's kind of like the magician showing you how they saw the lady in half. This is about the narcissist. There was a moment where, because I said, you know, were you born this way or were you created like this? I mean, did something happen?
It developed, yeah.
And it was a moment where you know, I think this was in part 3, but there was a moment where he did start to touch on, and he talked about his mother, and you could tell there was something, and he started to go in there, and then he came back out because it was way too scary.
Too sensitive for them to go
severe trauma, abuse, I'm thinking sexual abuse, physical abuse, emotional abuse, but at a really young age.
So abuse, yes, for sure. That can lead to a narcissistic personality development. Also, like a survivor of like war, or like displacement from like a natural disaster, and you know, your whole family is killed and it's just you and you have to survive, and then it becomes very all about your survival, right? And so those things can also kind of developmentally lead down that road. The other, and I would say really prominent factor, is if one of your parents is a narcissist.
Right.
And so again, certain public figures that we might be aware of has siblings who are not the same. And it's very, very common in like a family group, like in family dynamics or family systems, for if there's a family of like more than one child, one of them is chosen as the golden child by the narcissistic parent. The other children are ignored, invisible children, or scapegoat children, or the truth teller, which is then kind of the exiled child, and the invisible child, you know, doesn't exist, and everything they do isn't good enough. You don't get noticed, you don't get attention, you don't get praise, whatever. And so, I mean, those children develop other issues in adulthood, but the golden child most often becomes the narcissistic adult.
Oh, right. Oh my gosh.
Because they can do no wrong. They're amazing. They're wonderful. You know, again,
right. They've been told their whole life. That's exactly.
Yeah. They poop rainbows, like, you know, and so, you know, they're put on this pedestal. They're, you know, no one is good enough for them. They're, you know, the rivers and oceans should be parted for this kid. And, you know, how dare you give them an 85 when they deserve, and, you know, they think they should get a 95 or whatever. Right. So, so that kind of thing, very, very common to have a narcissistic parent breed more narcissistic children.
Wow. So would you mind, because I know a lot of people that are tuning into this, that are listening to this or watching it on YouTube, are victims of narcissists. They've either been in a relationship and then figured it out. And trust me, there's a lot of people walking around thinking that it's them, thinking that they're insecure or jealous or crazy, and they don't realize that they've been in a relationship with a narcissist or they've been manipulated by a narcissist. They don't know. So if they're coming across this for the first time, by the way, this could be a bit triggering for people, right? And
Absolutely.
especially if you've been a victim of a narcissist and it was extreme abuse, then this could be a bit triggering for you. But what we want to do is also give you some tools as well. So,
Absolutely.
so if you don't mind, also so let's say we find out, right? We wake up one day and go, holy shit, I'm married to a narcissist, or I'm in a relationship with a narcissist. What are some things that we can do immediately? what can we do? And then I understand you have some resources for people.
Yeah. So if some of you might be wondering, some of people listening, am I involved with one? So there's a little bit of a kind of cheat sheet sort of checklist questions that you can ask yourself. So I'll run through those really quickly so that you can kind of, do a little self check-in as you're listening to help you to kind of decipher if this is what you're dealing with. So you might ask questions such as, does my partner experience an exaggerated sense of self-importance? Do they require constant admiration from others? Do they expect total compliance from others? Do as I say, not as I do kind of thing. Double standards, the rules don't apply to them, but everyone else needs to listen to what they want them to do. Do they struggle to recognize, here's the hallmark part, do they struggle to recognize the emotions and needs of other people? Does my partner ever expect special treatment or favors to be pulled from other people? Do they ever experience heightened jealousy about the success or the perceived success of other people? Do they insist on having the best of everything? Great car, nice house, fancy clothes, great office, whatever. And do they assume that others are jealous of their talents and successes? So, if you answer yes to more than one of those, two or more, you might want to do a little reflection. The
narcissists that I've encountered in my life, they're all checked off.
Yeah, exactly.
They're all.
Exactly, 100%. And you might also be wondering, okay, so how do I know if I've been like psychologically abused? That's another really common question. So if you are a victim of gaslighting, so where the person is saying things to you like, that never happened, I never did that, you're crazy, you're making this up, you are too sensitive, I was just joking, can't you take a joke? Oh my gosh, you're overreacting. Oh yeah. Or my favorite, if you're a woman, you're PMSing. Yeah. Mocking you, bullying, intimidating you, making fun of you in front of other people. Again, not being able to be held accountable for their actions, blaming others, denying, deflecting, and then, sucking you back in with a little breadcrumbing of that love bombing and wonderfulness, just to keep you hooked, and then going around that cycle of abuse again. So if any of that sounds familiar to you, again, it's pretty certain that you're in, a relationship that isn't healthy and that is, has hallmarks of emotional abuse. This has traumatic impact on your brain. So are you feeling hyper alert, constantly on edge, walking on eggshells, waiting for something bad to happen? Does it feel like you're helpless? Are you feeling confused? Do you think you're going crazy? These are all the things that we experience, and certainly things that I experienced myself. Low self-worth. So these are the things that I want to kind of highlight. And then to answer your, what can I do about this? Number one, ideally, we want to go no contact. Absolutely. Whenever possible. Absolutely. So, if you are able to just cut this person out of your life,
change your phone number,
all that, everything, block them from social media, delete your social media and create a new one, just cut them out of your life. This is the only way to ensure that you're never going to have further abuse from that person.
Yes.
If it's not possible, for example, if you share children, if you share, assets, property, that kind of thing, and it's going to be a drawn out process, then it's very important to understand how to set boundaries. So quite often over the course of our relationships with these people, the boundaries that we used to be really good at have eroded over time because they keep knocking them down. And so we have to set very clear boundaries and be relentless in sticking to them and going what we call gray rock. I don't know if that's the term that you've probably heard before, but going gray rock essentially means when you do engage in communication, it is as bland, basic, and boring as possible.
Don't give them any fuel.
Monosyllabic, if possible, like 1-word answers, 2-word answers, logistics focused only, zero back and forth about feelings, no discussion, just time, place, pick up, drop off, done. You limit it to one method of communication. They're only allowed to email, or they're only allowed to text. Better yet, use an app that can be used in court, such as Our Family Wizard. Download that, because limit them to only being able to communicate with you in one way. You don't answer the phone. You don't listen to the messages. You send the emails to spam. It's just all blocked except for one method of communication. Only if you have to, because
only if you absolutely have to.
Yeah.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. Other than that, cut them out.
When you do interact, it is just stone-faced, boring, logistics focused only. And so that is something that you can do. And then if you're still like, well, I still live with this person, so what do I do in that situation? So I recommend using what we call the Jade Technique. So Jade, Jade. And Jade means that when we interact with narcissistic people, and this is, I think, applicable to, narcissists in the workplace, maybe family members, other family members, etc. We never ever justify, argue, defend ourselves, or explain our actions to a narcissist. So we don't justify, we don't argue, we don't defend, and we don't explain ourselves.
You play possum.
Yep. You build a support system, you engage, most importantly,
and get the hell out of there.
Engage in trauma therapy with someone who has training in PTSD, trauma recovery, abusive relationships, domestic violence, abuse, whatever. You need to engage in therapy with someone who knows how to help you manage and navigate the traumatic impact that this has had on your brain.
A traumatic impact it's had on your brain and also your heart.
Oh, absolutely.
Because what happens too is that when you're the victim of a narcissist and it's before you actually realize it, but it's when they have churned up and gotten all that emotional fuel out of you. And usually it's to break your heart. So, whatever it is, whatever manipulation in order to absolutely shatter your heart, because again, they have no empathy. There's no heart there. So once they've completely shattered your heart, then again, they'll move on to get more fuel, or they'll come back. They'll say, "Oh, I'm sorry. I really love you." So they're going to love bomb you to get more fuel out of you.
I've gone to therapy. It's going to be different this time. Yes. I can't live without you. No. This is
the thing is that this is why it can ruin so many lives too. It's not only the mental, but it's the heart.
Oh, it's the heart. And we have with trauma bond. So we become trauma bonded to our partners.
And we also don't trust anyone else. How can you trust anyone after someone has love bombed you and narcissisted you, right? And manipulated. Exactly. So what happens is that you go, you know what? I'll never, ever open my heart again to another person.
Yep.
Because that person who did that to you was so convincing, was so believable, that even your friends and family were thinking they're the greatest thing since sliced bread.
Mm-hmm.
And we didn't even get into the whole flying monkey thing too.
Oh yes, that's a whole other kettle of fish. Exactly. Yeah, and they try to recruit people, friends and family members to be their flying monkeys. In my case, my family he was successful temporarily, and then once I actually found out what he said to them, then it all came unraveling very quickly, and they never spoke to him again, of course.
Well, they don't count on people actually like talking to each other either.
No, they're not.
Checking sources and going, wait a second.
Yeah. Exactly.
I never did that. I was never there. What? Wait, what?
Yeah, exactly. And
then the web of lies all comes undone. And yeah.
And it's interesting that he never ever contacted them again after that phone call.
Oh, really?
Yeah, never again. How interesting. Yeah. So yeah, the flying monkeys is really, really, it's a challenge too, because then, they're going to have this whole smear campaign about how terrible you were and try to get people again to feel sorry for them because they're the innocent victims, of course, in all of this.
Yes.
Having to deal with, their crazy partner.
Yes.
Yeah, it's just next level, right? And it makes you go next level, and it makes you feel like, what you don't know up from down. And so that's why engaging in trauma therapy is super important, because you need someone to you need some support to kind of navigate through. You need
to talk to someone, and you need to, and I agree completely. The best thing to do is absolutely no contact. Absolutely. It's almost like you pretend that they're dead. And
like the data is in from psychologists to neurologists to psychiatrists, therapists to don't talk to them.
because and if you actually really do just kind of look at them and conceptualize that they are vampires, would you hang around a vampire?
Well, no, we wouldn't. And
because your neck is looking really good to a vampire, right?
And I ask people, I'm like, if on date number 1, your partner behaved to you and treated you the same way that they did last week, would you have shown up for date number 2?
Nope.
And the answer is no. We would run for the hills, right? And set everything on fire on the way out, just to make sure. But the thing is that the manipulation is slow, it's progressive, it's insidious, it's very hard to see. It's playing on your weaknesses and on your vulnerabilities, like you mentioned earlier. And again, back to the seafood, because I'm an East Coast girl. It's like putting a lobster in boiling hot water immediately. Lobster's going to be like, get me out of here. This is terrible. Danger, danger. But if you put a lobster in cold water and start slowly turn up the heat, it doesn't really notice that the temperature is going up.
Yeah.
And so we are the lobster in the cold water.
Yes, we are.
Right. And that's what happens. And then we don't realize it until we're reached the boiling point, figuratively and literally, oh my God, this is terrible. What's happening? Right.
Oh, I adore you, Heather. You're welcome back anytime. Absolutely anytime.
Be happy to come back anytime.
Because we can talk
so much. We can talk about this forever.
Right? We could talk about this forever. I want you back definitely on the show. And if people, because people do need to talk about this, and if people do need to reach out to you to talk to you, and I understand you're offering something really amazing to our listeners and our viewers. And that's a consultation with them.
So actually I have 2 things that I'd love to offer to our listeners. One is a free download of my book that specifically focuses on healing from the trauma of narcissistic abuse. And so there's a link to download that from my website. So please go ahead, feel free to go and download that, and hopefully you'll find it helpful. And then also I'm happy to provide, free consultation to anyone who would like to reach out and just touch base, so that I can provide perhaps some further information, some guidance. You want to talk about your situation, you want to get, some ideas on what you might do. I'd be happy to meet with you. So those are 2 things that I would
that is
love to share.
That just made my heart like, That is so, that is really beautiful and generous of you. And I know, well, because you yourself have been a victim, so you know how devastating it is. I'm getting teary-eyed here.
So I mean, it was my clients who showed up in my office. It's so interesting. You know, I was in this kind of smaller city, just doing a private practice, and the amount of people, mainly women, but also a few men, have shown up in my office in this situation, in these abusive relationships, like trying to make sense of it, trying to leave, like not understanding what's happening. And I was just like, wow, this must be such a much bigger problem than I ever thought of, just because I survived it. I didn't really think how prevalent it was, and so it was my very brave clients who I've had the privilege of knowing and working with that inspired me to write the book, and to kind of, because there's so many more people out there, more than I know, who are struggling with this. And I know when I was in it, or when I was just out of it, in that like lonely island, like what the hell am I going to do? I would have really benefited from this.
Exactly. It's it saves lives, I think, is what the work that you do. It really can, because it can mess with your mind, and it can mess with your heart. And just think about all those wonderful future relationships that you can have after just knowing what you've dealt with and processing that. And so thank you so very much. We'll put the link for the book. You can download Heather's book, which is Healed from Your Narcissist Ex. We'll put the link there. That is so generous that you're going to allow people to get the book for free. And also even more generous is a free consultation session with Heather Kent. And I'll put the link in the show notes as well for that. You're an angel. Thank you so very much. And
well, thank you so much for the work that you do, and the important topics that you cover, and the topics that you share with the world. Because if it weren't for you hosting all of the people that you have, then other listeners wouldn't be able to benefit. So
thank you, darling. Thank you so much. Thank you. And I want to thank you, wonderful listeners and viewers on YouTube, for tuning in today. Listen, if this show impacted you, or if you know of someone who has been a victim of a narcissist, please share this. Share the video, share the podcast, share it with someone who can benefit from this program as far and as wide as you can. And also, if you just stumbled across the show, please like and subscribe. We've got more great episodes coming up, and we'll bring back Heather Kent. We'll bring her back as well to talk more about this narcissistic, crazy stuff that's been happening in the world. Until next time, I'm Christine Blosdale. Thank you so very much for listening. And as I always say, remember to think outside that damn box. Bye for now.